It's always good things to think of. Love if I could see your faces. Thank you, Jennifer, Robert, and Mumai. Yes. Could you please write in the chat your what what business are you in? We'll start by that. What business are you in? And I'm going to share my screen a little bit and tell you a little bit about what we're going to run through today. So we're going to talk about connection because that has a lot to do and resilience, which we need so much in business these days, and some of the ways that we can get there. So I'm waiting for people to be writing in the chat. Thank you. And we're going to talk about coaching, a coaching culture as part of what culture is, because I think especially for people that have not too many employees, but they're working with other companies and they want to talk to them, you could use coaching skills for so many different things. And then building the culture you want. I'm going to share with you some of the things that I implemented at New Level Work, which is a executive coaching and training company, and the things that we did. And we weren't a big company. So I think a lot of the lessons that we had, you'll be able to utilize. And I will try to keep thinking about that we're talking to a lot of solopreneurs and you're going to work with a lot of different companies. So we see people, a psychotherapist, we have Jennifer. Anybody else want to put on the chat so that we can find out what's going on? And I'd love to know, what's your business and what do you want to take away about company culture? Especially those of you that are sole proprietors. What do you want to take away today? Well, that's having some tech difficulties. Okay. Public Affairs Office for the state. Great. And what would you like to take away today, Robert? If this was a great webinar and you get what you need, what would you like to take away?
No, I just saw that it had a very interesting title, and I manage a team of professionals, and I'm always looking to create a good culture for them and myself. So just looking for ideas.
Great. Thank you, Robert. Thanks for speaking up. Yes. Anybody else? And Bun Mi is an event planner who's getting started in her own business. So it's always good in the very beginning to be able to think about what do you want to create? Because if we think about the culture we want to create as we develop the business, we can begin.
Jennifer actually just said that they're enthusiastic for shared goals and projects, loyalty. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you. Great. Thanks for sharing that. So the ways that we create connection, whoops, pardon me. I blew that up. The way that we create connection is a whole number of things that we need to think about. We have to think about, how do we give people positivity and hope that things are happening? How do we provide encouragement? Belonging, I'll even keep talking about belonging because it's such a big thing in culture that people often don't feel like they belong. And how do we give new perspectives? All of these things will help us build the resilience that we need. And what about validation? Validation of people. Like, I want to feel that people validate who I am and they appreciate who I am. And we share our burdens. You know, something that leaders always need to know is that asking for help is a great leadership skill. Because if we don't ask for help, we're really cutting ourselves off from people. And when we ask for help, everybody knows, oh, that's okay in this organization to ask for help. So being a great leader is really knowing how to ask the right questions and not having to know all the answers. So I think that's something that all of us as leaders need to realize. So a coaching culture. Has anybody here ever had a coach? Yeah, Amanda, what was that experience like? Can you share a little bit?
Absolutely. So I was looking for someone to be accountable to and to help in areas of my business where I needed some growth. So I reached out to an expert in that growth area, and we had weekly calls and assignments that I was expected to complete or tasked to complete before. And it really helped bring my business to the next level.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great description because coaching is really about looking ahead, right, to the future. It's not about looking back what may have happened, but it's setting a goal and being able to think about how are you going to get there. And that accountability piece that a coach brings and that we can bring for each other as peers is really, really important. Anybody else have any experience with coaching they want to share? All right, let me tell you a little bit, a kind of a crash course, and then I'll go into these a little bit more. To be able to develop coaching skills, which will really help with your culture, the first thing is to be curious. You know, curiosity is a skill that all coaches learn in the beginning, that if you're not sure about something, you be curious and not judge it and not to make assumptions. Because sometimes when we make assumptions, we really get caught into different areas that don't make any sense. So be curious, and you can use that phrase, I'm curious. What brought you to that question, or what brought you to this place? And then the second is to be a great listener. And I'm going to give you a few pointers on that too. I'm going to talk about what they teach in coaching, because if any culture where people feel that they're heard and they're listened to, is going to be stronger because people will feel more empathy. And the third tip is to ask questions, but ask the right questions. So I'm going to share some of that. You know, we have questions that usually fit into categories of what, why, and how. And those are very different. What happens to the brain, because I've done a lot of study in neuroscience and what happens in the brain when we ask those questions. And then the other is delegating effectively. If we're going to delegate, we don't want to be looked at as a micromanager. We want to look like we're delegating to people, giving them other tasks to do because we want to empower them, because we believe in them, because we know their strengths. And then the last one, which is really important, and I'm going to talk a lot about this all through our program, is about celebrating wins. Because when people know that they have done something that worked and they get recognition for it, the brain goes, I get a shot of dopamine. That felt good. I'm going to do that again. But if we don't acknowledge people specifically for what they do, then we're going to lose them. You know, they're not going to be committed. They're not going to do those same things again. Pardon me. Any thoughts on that, on the coaching piece? Who has used some coaching skills in their work? Jennifer, what kind of work do you do?
Hi, I hope I'm doing this right. Can everyone hear me?
We can hear you. We can't
Okay.
see you anymore, but we can hear you. So that's
So I'm
good.
working off of my mobile phone and it's giving me
Okay.
one option at a time. But anyhow, what was the question again?
The,
How
your
to use-
experience with coaching, yeah, and how you could use coaching.
Well, I've been in private practice for about almost 20 years now, but I run a wellness collaborative. So, I use a lot of coaching strategies while supervising employees. I've been a manager of different programs, clinical programs in the past. So I've had lots of experience sort of with it.
Yeah. Oh, good. And I'm sure that it's really an important skill for your practice.
Yes.
Yeah. Great. And Maureen was saying, as we hire new people, we've come across some great workers, but they don't add to the interaction with others. We typically are very easygoing and it's flat here sometimes. Some of our employees have brought this to our attention. Oh, so we need to change the dynamic there. Oh, that's great, Maureen. Yes. All right, let's talk specifically about some of these areas now. So powerful questions. As I mentioned, powerful questions come in three flavors, I'll call them. What, why, and how. So what questions are questions that get you to think? If I ask you an open-ended question, not a yes or no, but a what question, what are the things that you want to be doing today? What's most important? Those things will get you to be able to answer and dig in your own mind for answers. So if you're training somebody, it's a really good skill to have, to be able to understand what questions. Now, if I ask why questions, like if I say, Robert, why did you do that? Sometimes that, well, even if, let me say it in a more benign way, Robert, why did you do that? It sometimes can sound judgy, that I might be saying, why'd you make that decision? Instead of, what was the outcome you were looking for on that, Robert? So I think it's important to understand that why. Not that you should never use it, but just be aware what happens in the brain when we say why. And then how gets us to really look at how are we going to do something? So logistically, so it gets the left side of the brain that's kind of forming what do I need to create here? What pattern is the how? So you have really a choice as you're thinking about this with coaching is the what, the why, and the how. So here's some samples of what questions. And in the appendix that you'll all get a copy of, I have a whole handout on what questions. Because when coaches are being trained, they always need to look at these. I used to have a list right next to my desk in the beginning to make sure that I was asking as many questions that were going to bring out the best in people's answers. What gives you satisfaction and makes you feel inspired? What are you resisting? What frustrates you? So there's such an array of questions that will get people to think, oh, yeah, this frustrates me. So those questions are really important. Would everybody take a moment and put a what question into the chat? What's a what question that you think would be really useful for you? What were you thinking? Yeah. Well, depends on how you say that, right? What were you thinking when you made that decision? Yes, thank you. Anybody else put something in the chat? And yes, Jennifer, you're going to get a copy of the slide deck. So what were you thinking when you planned out that project? Yeah. Okay, Amanda said, I like desired outcome. Yeah. And it disarms people. Yeah, say more about that, Amanda.
I think sometimes the way you ask a question can make people defensive, right? But when you're talking to them about their desired outcome, they start to focus on what was their goal versus what they did right or wrong. And it just helps shift their perspective a little bit.
Yeah, that's great. So true. Yeah. And then Jennifer says, what does that look like to you? Yeah. What are we trying to create? What's our next step? What's our next action that we need to take? So those what questions are very, very powerful. Great. Now we're going to look at listening a little bit. Whoops. We're running. Okay. At the Coaches Training Institute, they teach 3 levels of listening. And all of the people that I've coached over the years, which probably about 1,000 over the years, I began my work at Google back 25 years ago. This has really been one of the most powerful things that people don't realize, that listening, what a big difference it makes. Now, level 1 listening, and I'm sure you've had this experience with people. It's when you're talking to somebody and you see that they really want to respond right away. So they're not really cued in and listening. So they're listening to say, oh yeah, that happened to me too, or this is that, or da da da. They want to jump in. If you say, I had a great vacation, and they say, let me tell you about mine. That's listening at level 1. And so the person really doesn't get to feel heard. Now we have to do that. If we go to a restaurant, you want to be at level 1 because you want to be getting your needs met. So that's going to be a different situation. But if you're sitting down with a colleague or a friend or a family member and they really want to be heard, you need to listen at level 2. And level 2 is about understanding, that we want to be able to listen so we fully understand and that the person feels heard. Has anybody had that experience? Put something in the chat there. You know, that you really had a conversation with somebody and you felt that they were connected to you. I had somebody that I was coaching, a very senior leader in a company, and I was in his office, and he was sitting at his desk about 10 feet away. And he's like, "Oh, don't worry, I'm listening." And he's going over like this. And that's what he did with all his staff. And that was a real problem because he didn't have um, a lot of, uh, let's say, respect from his staff because people didn't feel like he listened. And physically, he was setting himself up to be different, plus the other. And Bumai says, "My kids, yes. Do you listen to your kids? What is it with your kids that you need to be a really good listener, Bumai?"
Yeah, sorry. There's a lot of things going on my mind. The first one, I'll listen to respond, I'll say it's my husband. But then the second one, it's like just because I'm not from American, so the culture crashes with my kids. Like I have to definitely listen to their opinion and kind of let them go their own way because they're trying to specifically tell you what to do. And it's just in another way, which in Nigerian culture, it doesn't go that way. The parents tell the kids what to do. So, and I will make a quick example. It's like I'm throwing a birthday party for my husband. Then I told my daughter, I was like, go outside and stay there and tell everyone that the party is at the backyard. So you know what she did? She get a paper and said, okay, please go to the backyard. Don't press the bell, it's inside. So I was like, why did you do that? It's like, Mom, it's no point of me saying outside. They can read. So with that, I was like, I had to let it go because she didn't actually do what I want her to do, but she did it in her own way.
Yeah, yeah.
That makes sense. That's what I'm thinking when you were saying that.
Okay. So she was being creative, but hopefully she was listening to you. That was part of it. What's the message you wanted to get across? Yes. Oftentimes I'll use the example of if you're at a restaurant and you see a couple that maybe they were just started dating or something, that you'll see that there's a connection there, that it looks like there's nobody else in the room. So that's like that listening for understanding. And conscious listening, level 3, is when you pick up the energy of things. Has anybody ever walked into an office or a conference room and you could feel what was going on? You could feel even with it that there's tension in the room, or without people even saying anything, it's picking up on all the different cues that are there. So that conscious listening is important. I have walked inside companies and just walked through the front door of the company. And there was a tech company I did this with in Rhode Island. And I walked in and people were walking through the halls and nobody was lifting their head to say hello. And you could begin to already feel what was going on. So that conscious listening, I could feel that the culture in that company was not going to be warm and inviting. You know, people were not walking down the hall and saying hello to people. So we need to be aware of those things and we pick it up by listening. Any other questions or thoughts? Please put it in the chat. That would be great. Now, one of the big problems we have, and for those of you that are either consulting or those of you with companies, 43% of people in companies feel invisible. That is a pretty sad statistic. And so what we want by creating a culture that people work together and acknowledge each other is really about helping people feel visible. Because what happens when you feel invisible? You know, what happens at work? Anybody have an answer for that? If you're feeling invisible in a company, like nobody's there, what kind of behaviors are you going to have? What are you going to do? Any thoughts? I think you're not going to want to play full out. You're going to just stand back if you feel invisible. Like nobody's going to notice that I didn't put in my 100% of what I wanted to do. You become disgruntled, yes, and you feel alone. Yeah, and oftentimes you'll act out in order to get attention. It's like kids, right? If they want attention, they act out. And the same if you feel invisible in a company. Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, that's helpful. And more things about kids, right, Bumney? That's like you'll feel alone if you feel invisible. Great. Thank you for that. Now, can you write a word in the chat that describes your company culture now? Like whatever company you're working in, and if you are a sole proprietor, a solopreneur, you are the company. So what is the culture? How do you make people feel? What's that word that you want people to feel? Oh, and Jennifer put something else too. You engage in the rumor mill. Yeah, if you think things are not going good and you feel invisible. So right now, Robert says siloed. Yeah, companies that are siloed, we need to see how do we break those things down? Thank you, Robert. What else? What's a word that describes your company culture now? And Bumney, you're working with another company now. How would you describe the culture there? What's one word you would use in your company to describe it?
When I first started, I feel alone. Everyone was just doing their own thing. There's no discipline going on. But as of right now, I just have to, this is what I put on the table. I was like, you got to feel valued. Just like the company needs you, you also need the company. You have to understand, this is where you work. This is where you work, and this is where you get the money from. You have to help the company so the company can help you. And
That's
since
great.
I've been doing that, that has been work. All the bad people has already left, like they know. And then I have my own people right now, which they know that change is coming, which we already started. So which works great for me. Like I feel like they listen to me. They know the points of why I'm doing the job. And that's what I want my company to be. Like I value them just as much as they value me.
That's great. I love that reciprocal. Yeah, value them as they value me. And what is desired is pride and affection for the team. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Jennifer. And collaborative. Okay, Maureen's company, people are collaborative. That's awesome. So there's many ways that if we know where we are, then we can figure out easier where we're going. Because culture has a continuum. It's like where we are now, like Robert's example of it feels siloed in the company. So there's a gap. And then where do we want to be? What's a word, Robert, that you would use to be where you want to be? You don't want to be siloed in the company. You don't want the company to feel siloed. Everybody's like has their own things and they're not really connecting. What would be the word that you describe the culture you want?
Collaborative, more connected, because a lot of us work remotely, so it's really hard to have a cohesive team when everyone is working from home. So
Yeah, yeah. You have to have ways to be able to keep that connection. So I'm going to go over some of the activities that you can do to be able to make that connection so that people can feel more collaborative. And I'm going to do a quick little visualization now to help you kind of think about this, like visualizing the culture that you want in your company. Has anybody done guided visualizations before? I've used them a lot in business over the years. And I think it helps our brain to see where we want to go. So this is going to be a quick one. And I also have put it at the end of this deck if you want to relook at it again. But if you just get comfortable for a moment, and you can close your eyes if you want. Hopefully those that aren't on screen are listening to this. We're going to visualize your company's future 6 months from now. So get comfortable, focus on your breath, breathing in and out. And with each breath, you get more relaxed and centered. Let any thoughts or sounds just go by and just clear your head and be here for the moment. You have had many successes building an empathetic, collaborative, and productive culture. You've involved different areas of the company to get different perspectives. What are you noticing now, 6 months from now? 6 months from now, the company has flourished. People are feeling much more connected, and you see the results in how staff connect and support each other. The company has been challenged with too many silos and not enough collaboration. What are some of the things that you have done to bring people together that has worked? As we look ahead in this 6-month time frame, what are the feelings people are expressing? Things have changed in the last 6 months. So when you look ahead and you've put together some of these culture activities, you're really seeing a difference. And what kind of company activities have helped to close that culture gap? So take a moment and think about that. Think about if you journeyed into 6 months from now, what did you see there? What happened? And I'd love to hear from some people. What did you see when you made some changes in the company? And as we talked about with Robert, we talked about closing that gap. What is that gap between where you are now and where you want to be? Is there anything you saw in this guided visualization when you looked into the future? Did anything come up for you, Jennifer? No? All right. Well, think about this, and I did put it at the end of our presentation. So if you want to go back and visit it again, I think that would be great. So what's the biggest challenge and/or opportunity you have to move ahead, to move towards a vision? What's the biggest challenge that you think you have? Let's look at challenge first. What gets in the way of people being collaborative? And we had things that people were engaging in the rumor mill and feeling disgruntled. What's the biggest challenge that you have if you're going to implement some things that are going to make a difference in the culture? Yeah, getting buy-in, right? That's great because people need to buy in. And yeah, if there's a yeah, Jennifer mentioned this before, that when people have an entitlement, they think they're entitled to something. That what does that do to a culture when people feel entitled, Jennifer? Thank you. I know it's challenging. Well, we're waiting for Jennifer to speak. Maureen has
It
said,
spreads like wildfire.
oh,
It just becomes the culture, and everybody kind of wants something for nothing,
yeah, yeah.
or feel as though they deserve something, even though they're not participating in the overall goals and efforts of the group.
Yeah, yeah. Boy, that's hard. And how do you break that pattern?
Well, that's why I'm here.
Yeah, right,
I'm hoping you're
right.
going to have some good tips for me.
Good. I hope so. I hope so.
It's been hard. It's been hard for sure.
Yeah, yeah. It's people need to understand what their impact is.
Well,
There's a big,
sometimes it's determining, what is like a feature of the personality as opposed to something that has been misguided in the culture. And where's it coming from?
yeah, great point. Because sometimes it's just who that person is. They will always be looking at things like that in their personal
Absolutely.
life as well as their business life. And that's hard to
Absolutely.
shift around. Yeah.
Mhm.
But having people be able to talk about culture and acknowledge each other. Yeah, and Robert says personality styles can be a challenge. Yeah, which is kind of what we're pointing to. people have different expectations, and that entitlement piece, you know, we're dealing with the same problem with people feeling siloed and not feeling heard. So yeah, that's important to be able to deal with those challenges. So let's look at some activities. So how do we bring people together? Because when we bring people together, it makes a big difference in how they're going to look at things. And I know that's challenging when a lot of us are in hybrid workplaces or we work remotely, but we could still come together on things like Zoom and I'll show you pictures of us on Zoom. You can still, most of the people in new level work where I was chief of culture, we had people from all around the world. So people, I have so many people on my team that I have never met, and I feel so close to them, like they are friends and family, and I've never met them. And I was able to create that on Zoom. So we have opportunities, even though it seems like it's harder when we're remote. An acknowledgement circle. This is something that I've done so many times with so many groups, and companies can use this very easily. When you bring people together in a group, so an acknowledgement circle, you would see these 6 people here in the picture. And one person would go at a time, and the other people would say, one thing I appreciate about you is this. And people will always say, oh, no, 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 no. And they'll try to push away anything good. But you say, no, part of the directions are just say thank you when someone says that. Because people are a little bit afraid of this because they think nobody will have anything nice to say about them. And I've never had that experience. So when you bring them together, you take one person at a time and maybe 2 people or maybe 3 people, depending on the size of the group. I've done it with groups of 12 people, would have something to say and share about this person. And it is amazing when people feel, it's about feeling seen, what we talked about before. So I think it's something that you could use at a company meeting. You could also use it, you could do it virtually on Zoom. Like, let's talk about Jennifer today, you know, and what do we appreciate about Jennifer? And everybody can say something. So I think this is that acknowledgement. We don't do it. We kind of shy away from it. And when I suggest to companies that we do this, people get, well, not the company believes in it, but the individuals feel afraid because they think no one's going to have anything nice to say. And people do. We have to build a muscle for finding the things that work. Because there's 2 different things. There's recognition and there's appreciation. Now, recognition is about talking to somebody about what you did. You know, Robert, I really love that you met those sales goals for the company. That was great. Congratulations. So that's recognition on that. And that's okay. You know, it feels good. You made something happen. But what is more impactful is appreciation, because appreciation is about who you are. So, Robert, you met those sales goals, but what I really appreciated about what you did was how you got our clients, customers to feel valued. And that's what made that happen. So I appreciate that about you. Which one feels better? Robert, I know I made those up, but I would think that they're somewhat true. Yes.
Hearing the impact of my work is better, I think, rather than just like a compliment.
Yeah, yeah. And that it's and who you are that had that happen, and not just, you know, great sales goal. You made, you know, you brought in this much money, because that sticks with somebody, that somebody says, oh yeah, that was good. People really appreciated that. There's a oh goodness, and I'm not going to remember his name at the moment. There's a baseball player who has a YouTube video who talks about that, about when you're playing baseball and you get called in because you've done something wrong, because you got pulled off the base because maybe there were too many errors, and nobody talks to you. They're all afraid to talk to you. And there's really a thing about being able to recognize people that even in times like that, when things go wrong, that you can say, hey, good try, and not just ignoring people. So kudos. This was an expression that we used all the time in our company. And we set it up, we have a Slack channel, and whatever tools you use within your company, maybe have a channel that has kudos, that when somebody does something that's important or relevant, that you say, wow, kudos to Maureen, because she has really made a difference in how she's been working with people. And I really appreciate that about Maureen, or whatever it is. And it gets there, and then other people pile on. So we want to break down the silos, and we want to break down the entitlement for having people recognized for things that they've contributed or who they were. Somebody did a great job meeting at a client meeting, and this is what happened. So really try to have some way to be able to do kudos. Does anybody do that now in their company? Whatever software you're using, a place where you're able to acknowledge people? No. Robert shaking his head. Jennifer? No. Okay. See if there's a place to put that, because that's an important way that people can call out each other for what's successful. So how do you celebrate wins when in your company or with your clients? Oh, and Maureen says our scheduling PowerPoint allows it, but we aren't consistent with it. Okay. Well, maybe that's something, Maureen, that could happen in the future, right? That you could set that up. Would that make sense? Yeah, your scheduling app. Cool. I've tried, but getting difficulty getting buy-in. Yeah. Any suggestions from anybody? How do you get more buy-in for that? It's like success breeds success. Maybe one suggestion I would have is if you can have kind of a small team of people that really want to change the company culture, and you bring them together and say, we're going to do this together, because it's hard to do it by yourself. Yeah, it's hard to get people to consistently participate. So somebody needs to lead that charge. But I would suggest bring a few people together that would be the ones that would try to make this happen and say, yeah, we want to make a change in the company.
Wendy,
And if
can
you've
I-
got 2 or 3, that would be great.
Wendy,
Yes?
when we try it, it does seem a little kind of forced almost. Like it's, like you feel like, okay, now we got to pick someone else this week or next week. And like you kind of feel like you need to go through everybody to make it a little bit more fair and to not cause any issues. And why did this one? Sometimes I think it was worse than it was, more bother than it was worth when we did try it.
Yeah. Um, Well, I did not have that experience at New Level Work, because if somebody did something, if there was a new sale that happened, or somebody created a new program, so it wasn't that everybody has to get touched all the time. There needs to be something, but really trying to put some messages in there, maybe about, how people are doing, and how you appreciate what's happening in the company, but trying to think, and if it doesn't work, if it kind of backfires in doing it in a channel like that, then that's something that you leave out. There are other things that you can do. So let's look at those. But thank you for bringing that up, because it is a problem. And as a boss, anybody who's in a leadership position or a boss in the company, 93% of grateful bosses are more likely to succeed. So if you are leading a charge and you are grateful for the people and you tell them, you are much more likely to succeed than a boss that doesn't acknowledge those things. So it's really important that you learn to hone that skill.
Can I make a comment?
Please.
Yeah, I find that a lot of it has to do with if you're in the position of hiring people, that's 90% of it right there. You want to hire people that have the right attitude, and you can also set the tone for the culture at the very beginning of the employment rather than trying to fix it later. I found it's much more difficult to fix a broken situation later than just to get it right the first time in the hiring process. So I'll just leave that.
Yes, that's brilliant. Yes, Robert, it's so true, because I think the most important thing is what you're saying is you hire for somebody's attitude and character. You can always teach them the skills, but sometimes we go the opposite way. We hire for skills, but they're not going to be a good team player. And so then it's not going to work out. And so I think that's where you have to do it, because as we know, you're not going to change somebody's character. Who they are is who they are. And so, and some people in some organizations have been there a long time, so you're not going to change that. But I'm working with a nonprofit right now, and we're actually doing a book club with Brene Brown's book on leadership, and it's about vulnerability. And it's amazing how people that have worked together for like 25 years are getting to know each other on a different level and opening up more. So there are ways that you can pull things out, have somebody do something. So thank you for your comment. That's really important. And gratitude. Gratitude is about thank you, but gratitude actually impacts our brain. When we are grateful on both sides, if you're grateful for somebody, you impact them. And when you call out some things that they do, it impacts you. And there's a lot of things that you can do around gratitude. I actually keep a gratitude list every day. I write down at least 3 to 5 things in the morning that I'm grateful for, because that gets my brain going in the right direction for the day. There's an organization called grateful.org, if any of you are into gratitude, that you can get a little prompt each day. It's a wonderful organization. And it really does a lot to talk about what that does with the brain and neuroscience. So grateful.org. Now, in bigger companies, and this is something, Robert, in your company that you might be able to look at, we did this at New Level Work, and I have a whole outline in the back that you can look at. But we came up with, we met together and said, what are the things that are most important to us? So we want to be purpose-driven, collectively purpose-driven. We want to collaborate together to produce results. We want to include people so that everybody brings their true self to work, demonstrate compassionate care. Like that has to be something that people feel in our culture. And we want to be playful. We want to have fun. So we developed these, and I have the whole outline in the end if it's something that you want to look at for your company. It takes a while, it takes months to be able to do this, but then you have something that you're all, I call them culture expressions. It's what you're really going to work towards. Another thing is when you bring somebody into a company, say you hire somebody, Robert, and there's somebody that's really good in the company that really shows the culture of the company. When this new hire comes in, you put the people together and they become culture buddies. Because what happens when you go into a new company? You don't know what you're supposed to do, right? What you're not supposed to do. Like the rules are secret because there are things that are just aren't out there. You're not going to see in an employee manual. And so if you have somebody that you can check in with, a culture buddy, we have found that that really makes a difference. And a lot of companies that I've worked with have taken this on to look at culture buddies. We also created at New Level Work a culture committee. So when I talked about maybe pick a few people that are interested, these were people that were on our culture committee, and they were from all over the world. South Africa, South America, there's somebody from Boston. We did a lot of work over in some of the other areas near Ukraine. So this group was our culture committee, and they represented different parts of the organization. So they got together and we would meet every 6 weeks or so and be able to talk about what are some of the next activities that we're going to do? What do they see as needed? And how could everybody take responsibility to lead some? So if you can find a few people, it only has to be 2 or 3 that you could find in the company that would want to invest themselves in building the culture, I would really suggest this. And I put a charter that I had developed that people would look at to say, these are my responsibilities when I'm on the culture committee. So you'll be able to access that at the end. We also had happy hours. So we did this virtually. So a lot of companies, if they're together, they can do it, but we could do it virtually. That people would come and we'd say 5 o'clock on Wednesday, happy hour. bring whatever beverage you would like to have. And let's just chat. Let's pretend that we're hanging out all together someplace, if this is virtual, and be able to exchange stories, what's happening. There could be certain questions or a theme. We had a great time doing happy hours. And then I think this was even more successful. We did something we called mystery coffee. So it's a great way to meet new colleagues. We put something on the calendar. So you'd put this on for your whole company, and everybody would be able to come on. We usually had it in the morning around 8 or 9 o'clock, and we would have a question of the day, and then we would put people into breakouts so they'd have a one-on-one with somebody else that they didn't know, and they'd get to chat for 15 minutes and then come back. So this was maybe a 20-minute, 25-minute call, so it didn't take a lot out of somebody's work. But then they'd come back and we'd say, is there anything that you learned, about Jennifer while you met with her? What were some of the things that were outstanding that you didn't know before about Jennifer? And this has been very successful. We had a ball doing this, and we had people, the people that are here are from all over the world, and they would get on this morning coffee. Some it would be very early, some it would be later in the night. And they would exchange, and then they'd get in these one-on-ones. I think breaking them down into one-on-one groups really helped them, and have this mystery meetup. So when you think about those activities and think of something, what's one thing that you will do going forward to create a positive culture in your workplace? I'd love you to write it in the chat, and I'd love to hear from anybody, because the more we share with each other, the more we learn. So what's something that you're going to do? What's one action? Because that's part of coaching, right? You need to take an action to move forward. So following this information that you've gotten, what stood out to you? What do you want to do? Robert says an after-work activity once a month. Great. Yeah. People will get together and do something, and are you going to try to bring some other people on board with you, Robert, to plan something like this?
Yeah, well, when it was a little warmer, I planned a Top Golf outing. So we took a group of us, there's like 4 of us, went to Top Golf. The larger team is 25 people, so it's too big to get everyone there. But and other people are just not comfortable swinging a golf club, so you have to be mindful that some people are not going to enjoy the activity. So trying to find an activity that everyone enjoys. The default tends to be going to hang out in a bar. I don't drink, so I just get like an iced tea or something, but
Yeah.
seems to be the fallback.
Yeah. But there are other things that we could do, right? I love that. Yeah. What
Yeah.
are some other things that you could do? Because Top Golf could get expensive too, that everybody would utilize. Anybody have any ideas what you've done? There could be something, because we live in Rhode Island, there's it takes a little bit of expenses, but you could get on a boat and do one of the lighthouse tours. I agree with you. Not putting everything to be the bar is really important, that you have things for people. And maybe you meet somewhere at a park and you have a bocce ball tournament, or you go somewhere else where you can play pickleball, if anybody's never tried pickleball. So there are many things that you can keep moving around and doing. So thank you. That's great. And Maureen said we buy pizza or something similar every once in a while. Yeah. And maybe, Maureen, when you have the pizza, you could also add acknowledgement. Yes. To be able to get people around and say, what do we appreciate about this person? How do we acknowledge them? And bowling, Jennifer talked about bowling. Yeah, that's another great thing to be able to do, is bowling. Yeah, so there's a lot of activities that people can do. Anybody else have any ideas? And these are things on Bunmai, as a event planner, you'll be able to help some people in companies do something.
No. So what I do is I let them play game together. So I'll be like a bartender versus server. So we'll want to see the winner. So that seems to bring them together. So you see all the bartender working together, be like, oh, I know how to drink water so fast I'm more than you because I'm a bartender. And then the server will say, I know how to consistency, like fast. So they kind of get them together. And that's how I build the team up, by valuing them, by telling one person like, oh yeah, because we do have, like Jennifer said, we do have some people that thinks like they know it all. So I kind of want to say, okay, since you know you have already done this side, maybe someone else can do that side. So you kind of find out where their strength is. That's what I do that makes us all one right now.
Oh, that's such a good point, because if we know people's strengths, because when we operate from our strengths, it doesn't feel like we're working. If you have people do something that they're not good at all, like if somebody doesn't feel uncomfortable getting up in front of a group and speaking, then that's their strength. So you let them do that. If somebody else wants to be the one that does the financial pieces, they do that because that's their strength. So great point about strengths. Yes, and Maureen said we also do incentives with gift cards, Starbucks, Dunkin', yeah, local places. Yeah, different ways to be able to bring people together. Great. So in the appendix that you'll get, I put together the levels of listening, so you have a whole outline of what those levels are. The what questions, asking what questions and how do you practice it and what it's done, and some other resources. And then the expressions of culture that we talked about. Like these are the cultures that that I mentioned. And then we had the team come up and say, what does this actually mean? You know, what does purpose driven and strategic mean? What does this look like? So you can go over this and it may give you some ideas of what you could do in your company. And then the culture committee charter, whether you do it formally like this, which for us was a good thing, everybody really was proud to be part of this and look at, here's what we're going to do, here's the responsibilities I have that I'm on the team. This really helped our people feel very connected. So I hope those are resources that you'll be able to use. And if anybody has any other questions or things, they are welcome to reach out to me. If you take a picture of this QR code, you'll go directly to my LinkedIn profile. And I'd love to be connected with you all on LinkedIn. And then if you have any questions or comments or things, you can put it on there. And you're also welcome to reach out and email me, whansoncoach@gmail.com. And then the last thing I put in here was the guided visualization. So if you want to think about that again and put yourself in the future 6 months and see after you make some changes what that would look like. So thank you. Alana, I will pass it over to you now. Any other questions or comments or thoughts?
Thank you, Wendy. Her slides will be sent out to you all, so you can access that QR code as well as her contact information and that awesome breathing exercise. This was really great. I think some of these topics we covered today kind of slipped through the cracks with being a business owner. So I'm really glad that this was done today. And if you all have any good feedback for us, we would greatly appreciate it. I am going to launch 3 questions. If you could just respond, I would greatly appreciate that. It's just to help us better get a gauge for what topics you all are looking for, as well as time of day and the platform we're using for our trainings.
Great. Well, thank you all for your participation, and I wish you great success, and please feel free to reach out if I can help in any way.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Wendy.
Thanks. Take care. Have a wonderful day.
Thank
too.
you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining.